I'm Councillor Ian Barnes, Deputy Leader of Enfield Council, Winchmore Hill Councillor and Chair of our Climate Change Task Force. Richard Eason, our Healthy Streets Programme Director, is about to talk you through our new design of the low traffic neighbourhood for the Lakes Estate, which responds to your feedback. But first I'd like to remind you of the reasons why we want to introduce this low traffic neighbourhood scheme across Enfield, starting with this Fox Lane LTN. Road safety is obviously an absolute priority for us. Before lockdown, the Lakes Estate had tens of thousands of rat runners crisscrossing it every week, with speeds clocked at an incredible 60, 70 and even on the rare occasion 80 miles per hour. Many of you will have seen evidence of this with various collisions up and down the estate. There are an estimated 119,000 cars in Enfield, which is projected to increase by 24,000 in 20 years' time, so the dangers of speeding rat runners could only get worse, particularly as sat-navs try to shave a few seconds off a journey by sending vehicles of all sizes through quiet residential neighbourhoods. And during lockdown, speeding offences have increased by 650% as the average speed has crept up across London's roads. As lockdown eases, an expected spike in private car use combined with this increase in speed could prove to be a deadly combination. Pollution causes thousands of premature deaths in London every year, and the British Heart Foundation has found that living in some parts of the capital is now the equivalent of smoking 150 cigarettes a year. Air pollution could well be damaging every organ in the human body, and new research has linked pollution nanoparticles to brain cancer for the first time. Living near a busy road stunts lung growth in children and increases the risk of lung cancer, and asthma is on the increase in London. These grim statistics go on, and recent events have brought the problem even more sharply into focus, as research shows 80% of deaths due to COVID-19 were in the most polluted regions of countries. Pollution is obviously very closely connected to climate change, and Enfield's roads produce at least 39% of our borough's emissions, Enfield having one of the highest vehicle mileages in London. We have 10 years to reduce these emissions and limit global warming. If we're not successful, it'll significantly worsen the risk of drought, floods, extreme heat and also poverty for hundreds of millions of people across the globe. When it comes to physical activity, Enfield has one of the worst rates of childhood obesity in the country, which the council is trying to address. But we need to encourage our children to walk and cycle more. This goes for adults as well. We want to persuade residents to leave the car at home and feel the health benefits of walking or even cycling those 1 or 2 miles. Finally, an added issue we obviously hadn't envisaged during our initial engagement was the need to continue to socially distance as COVID-19 lockdown eases. This could continue for many months or even years, and like me, you've probably seen some people walking in the roads so they can distance from passers-by on the pavement. A low traffic neighbourhood will help make life safer as we navigate this future with COVID-19. I'll now hand over to Richard so you can hear more on the new LTN design.
Thank you very much, Councillor. My name's Richard. I hope you're all well. We would normally have looked to have held another event in person where we could have talked through some of these designs in a little bit more detail, but obviously these extraordinary times that we're in have prevented us from doing that. So we have looked to produce this video to help provide further detailed explanation of the design proposals. Before we start that, I would just like to provide a short kind of history of where we've been with this project. This project has been running for some time. We've had workshops in the past where we've listened to the community and heard about their thoughts on concerns about some of the issues in the area around speed and volume of traffic. We've also had a trial. We took a trial approach at placing planters in the area, not to prevent traffic cutting through, but to try and discourage it. And that simply didn't work. And the data is there to reinforce that. So now we've come forward with a new proposal. We shared some initial ideas towards the end of last year. We had some robust engagement, it's fair to say, on those proposals, and since that time we've spent more time reviewing those designs and adjusting those to respond to some of the key concerns from the community. And I think some of those key bits of feedback that we had included the introduction of a formal 20 mile an hour zone as part of the plans. we've done that. It was concerns about emergency services and how they might access the area. We've engaged and talked in detail with the emergency services and introduced 2 emergency gates into the proposals that they'll be able to continue to pass through, although residents will not. We've also will enable the waste collections to pass through those emergency gates as well. And overall, we've reduced the number of closure points. So a key theme from the feedback was that the original design was too restrictive in terms of the entry and exit points into the area. So we've re-looked at that. Listened further to some suggestions and feedback from the community and revised the locations of those. And we've also made sure that where we put in those closure points at the end of the roads that become no-through roads, that we're going to make sure we create sufficient distance through, in places, some extensions to the existing double yellow lines to make sure that there's sufficient space to turn. So I will now hand over to Alex and he can talk you through this detailed design before I'll come back to you briefly and then Councillor Barnes will conclude. So many thanks.
Hi, my name is Alex Stebbings and I'm a traffic engineer working for Norman Rorke Prime, and we've been supporting Enfield in the delivery of the Fox Lane Quarter neighbourhood. I'll be taking you through the data that we've collected, the analysis and also the proposed scheme itself. To understand the current traffic flows passing through the area, we've undertaken an origin and destination survey across the extent of the Fox Lane neighbourhood, with the surveys carried out from 7 AM to 7 PM on a weekday in October 2019. 20 cameras were used at each road on the entry and exit of the area. The cameras use number plate recognition software so we can understand the origin and destination of each vehicle passing through. And for the purposes of this study, we looked at all the journeys that entered and exited the Fox Lane area in less than 5 minutes, and therefore it can be assumed didn't stop within the area. These trips are considered through trips with no start or end point within the Fox Lane neighbourhood. We've looked at the total flows going from each individual point over the 12-hour period, with this table showing all the trips that were completed in less than 5 minutes. As you can see, there are specific routes that have much higher traffic flows because they represent the shortest journey times through the area. With the advent of mapping software such as Google Maps and Waze, drivers have the perfect knowledge of the road network, and vehicles on longer journeys are no longer using the strategic roads and following road signs, but using mapping software and carrying out the quickest journeys, which has resulted in an increase in the number of vehicles passing through residential areas such as this. As well as looking at individual routes, we've also looked at the cumulative flow entering and exiting specific points, which could be a result of multiple routes. As you can see, some of these roads see a high proportion of trips entering and exiting the area and carrying out a number of alternative routes through the area. We've also analysed the data for the morning peak hour, where the higher flows are generally seen on routes from north to south, and the evening peak hour, where the higher flows are generally seen on routes from south to north. This has helped to highlight whether there are specific issues associated with the morning and evening peak hour. Based on this analysis, we have developed a scheme which has been refined using the feedback from the consultation, so that we restrict through trips whilst trying to minimise the impacts on local residents and their journeys to or from home. With any scheme like this which severs the through routes, it's essential that the mitigation does not focus on just the roads that currently experience high volumes of through traffic, but also the neighbouring roads that may suffer if proposals were only introduced where there are currently issues. The plan shows where the closures have been put in place. To prevent north-south rat running, road closures have been put in place on the south side of Fox Lane from Old Park Road to the Mall, with an additional closure on Oakfield Road at the junction with the Mall. The closures will prohibit vehicles but allow cyclists through. It's important to note that these plans have been discussed with emergency services, and to allow additional access for them and refuse vehicles, we have provided 2 closures, one on Meadway and one on Fox Lane, that will allow access for emergency services and refuse vehicles. The proposed scheme also introduces a closure on Devonshire Road at the junction with Green Lanes, with Devonshire Road converted to two-way working to allow residents in and out and businesses accessing Devonshire Mews. The final element of the scheme is the introduction of a 20-mile-an-hour limit across the whole area. The W9 bus route passes through Fox Lane area and the route will be unaffected by the proposed scheme. Using the survey data, we've carried out an assessment of the total traffic flows, so that's the through trips as well as local trips with a start or end point in the area. This is to assess the potential traffic flows as a result of the scheme on the residential roads in the neighbourhood and the surrounding strategic roads. Here we have the existing flows from the 7 AM to 7 PM period. And here you can see the potential impact of the scheme, with all the roads in the area seeing reductions in traffic. It's important to note that this assessment assumes that all existing traffic reassigns onto the nearest available local strategic road, such as Green Lanes, Alderman's Hill and Bourne Hill. However, based on evidence of similar schemes like this that have been implemented in other areas of Outer London, the reassignment of traffic is not entirely focused on the local roads. The evidence has shown that some people choose to walk or cycle, others choose to travel at different times of the day if their journey is not time critical. People choose to combine trips, so rather than going from home to the shops and back, they may combine it with a trip to work, to school or another activity, and also longer trips spread out on the wider network away from the local roads. Some areas have seen a 15% drop in total traffic as a result of schemes like this, with people choosing to change their travel behaviour. This exercise has also been carried out for the AM and PM peak hour. In the AM peak, under the proposed scheme, the roads in the residential area see flows reducing to less than 200 vehicles an hour, with most seeing less than 100, which is under 2 vehicles a minute. The exception is the western end of Fox Lane, which still acts as a main route into the area, but is only likely to see total flows of between 200 and 300, which is half the normal peak hour traffic flow. And in the PM peak, we can see a similar story, with flows reducing across the local network. We have also produced tables that show the same information in numeric form, with these three time periods: the 7 AM to 7 PM period, the morning peak hour and the evening peak hour. This table shows the residential roads within the area, and we've also carried out the assessment on the roads immediately surrounding area, assessing the worst case scenario as I mentioned previously, with traffic flows on these roads likely to be lower because traffic has either reassigned or travelling at different times of the day when looking at the peak hours. These roads will form the main focus of the monitoring during the trial to understand the impacts, with traffic flows, queues and bus journey times monitored to make sure the wider network can operate satisfactorily, and we will continue to work closely with the TfL bus team and the road network managers to get their feedback. As part of the data collection, we also recorded the traffic speeds on the roads, and as you can see, a number of the roads have an average speed in excess of 25 miles an hour, and over 70% of the roads over 20 miles an hour, highlighting the need to implement a 20 mile an hour limit across the area.
I hope that's provided a little bit more insight into the designs. I do recognise that it's impossible to gain a consensus on these type of approaches, and there'll be a range of different views remaining in the community. We've done significant engagement, and the community's feedback have shaped and informed these designs. And now, subject to the approval process and a decision from Councillor Barnes, I feel that now is the time to take this forward to a trial, so that we can continue to listen to the community through the consultation process, and the community can share their views based on seeing the scheme working in operation, and then we can consider whether any further changes are required as part of that trial. I know some people don't think that we should be making any changes, but at the council we don't believe that doing nothing is an option. We want to implement some positive change in order to improve the quality of life and the environment in the Fox Lane and the Lakes Estate. Thank you for listening. I'll pass you back now to Councillor Barnes.
Thanks for watching, and I hope you found that useful. I'll soon be making a final decision on the future trial after examining all the data and information we've collected. The formal report will be published on the website, and the relevant ward councillors will have the opportunity to scrutinise this decision before a scheme is implemented. We'll send you a letter to let you know the final outcome, and if the trial goes ahead, then we'll start the formal consultation, allowing us to collect your views on how it will work in practice.